All right, good deal. Okay, this meeting will now be recorded. I want to thank Joe Alexander for joining us today to explore how Power Apps and Copilot Studio are transforming the way we build intelligent business solutions. We'll explore real-world examples and demos that showcase the impact of combining low code and AI for process enablement. We bring three of these events to our customers every month, with each taking place on Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. If there's a topic that you'd like to hear about in the future, please post that in the chat now for consideration. We'll also have a feedback form available for you at the end. To minimize distractions or potential background noise today, we're going to leverage the chat for questions. So please post them there, and anytime during today's session, we'll get them answered for you. Additionally, we do send follow-ups via email. These follow-ups will contain the recording used by our presenters in today's session. If you don't want to be included in the follow-ups in the future, please reply and we will take you off of our distribution list. With that, thank you, Joe, for presenting on this topic today and helping our customers get the most out of their investment in Microsoft Business applications. Whenever you're ready, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with everybody right now. If you can just let me know if you can see that, Kelly, that would be great.
Looks fantastic.
Awesome. Perfect. So, hey, nice to meet everybody. Just by way of introduction, my name is Joe Alexander. I am a solutions engineer with Microsoft here, focused on the Power Platform. And today, what I wanted to do is spend a little bit of time with you talking about this smarter together or better together story with AI and Power Apps, Power and the Power Platform. Obviously, there's a lot of buzz right now around AI replacing everything, right? In some cases, even apps, right? There's been quotes that have been out there in the past that I've seen, like by our own CEO saying, "Hey, the age of AI is among us, is upon us. Applications as we know them are being transformed, even replaced by AI." Right. And got me thinking a little bit about, okay, in this age of AI, what are we really looking at when it relates to the Power Platform? And while it's true that AI is really reshaping how we interact with technology, I don't think AI is going to take over the app role necessarily anytime soon. Apps aren't going anywhere. What's changing is how we build them, how we use them, and how intelligent we become. Right. If any of you were able to attend the Power Platform Conference back in would have been October, a couple weeks ago in Vegas, Charles Lamont, our CVP of the Power Platform, came out and was talking about AI. And he said a couple things on here that I thought were interesting, and you can kind of read through those. Is really the idea is Power Platform is being reborn, really with AI at its core. The thing that I really kind of stuck out to me is that it's no longer just a low code tool, but it's a foundation for intelligent applications that combine logic, data, and AI agents, right? And so in the AI area, it's these apps that we build really that are how organizations will scale innovation. So as I started to think through this, I thought to myself, well, if that's the case, what are some real life scenarios where we can look at places where AI combined with Power Apps and the Power Platform would provide us added functionality and added capabilities. And so the goal of what I had today is to kind of walk you guys through one of those use cases that came out from a client of a customer of ours. I don't know if they're on the phone or not today. I'm not going to say who they are, but I did use them as the kind of source of this particular use case. And I think there's applicability across the application or across the whole government kind of ecosystem, right? And so this is the use case that we're looking at. It's a district attorney's office, and in many district attorney's offices, they got a section of groups within there called the priors research team. Essentially, what these folks are asked to do is to review information around potential defendants that come up, right? They have to look at a variety of different types of reports, right? There are two primary reports out there. It's called a collector reports and a DOJ report, and try to get a full and complete understanding of who this defendant is who could be potentially part of a case, right? Right now, a lot of that review is done manually, right? They're downloading documents and putting them on their desk side by side and highlighting commonalities, differences, etc. They're bringing them up on two monitors and kind of going back and forth, as many of you probably are dealing with the dual screens as I am today here, right? Which takes a lot of time and manual effort. And in addition to that, it opens the doors to missing things, right? Key pieces of information that may be part of that research process. So I wanted to look at it today and kind of say, okay, if that's the case, how can we leverage Power Apps with a smarter UI on the back end to be able to share that and share that and improve that process for folks within the organization. So that's going to be the goal of what we're going to try to accomplish here today. So let's go through. So this is the current state, okay? And I'm going to show you a current state, and then I'm going to show you a future state of what we're going to see built out today, okay? So this is the current state. This is the DA staff. Again, they're downloading CLETS and DOJ reports or whatever reports they may be. They're either printed or downloaded to their machines, where then they take a manual eye or a set of eyes, right? Kind of one creepy eye looking at us right there, and doing that comparison back and forth, and ultimately then penning a new report, penning a summary, saying, hey, here's what I found in my research for this particular individual. We kind of reimagine that, right? And we reimagine that incorporating all the elements that you guys probably know around the Power Platform, but now we added in an AI layer to it, okay? And so it still starts with that DA staff. But the DA staff now works within a Power App that we've created that we called a Priors Research Analysis. And you're going to see this application today. Okay? That Priors Research Analysis application is built on Dataverse. Dataverse is where we're going to house the records, the CLETS and the DOJ reports that we're going to bring in. Dataverse is where we're going to house that ultimate output summary from the AI model that we're asking it to utilize, right? So Dataverse would be that foundation. Once that data is there, then we're going to run it through a couple of AI models. We're going to leverage some components around Power Automate Flow to be able to ultimately provide us with that summary. Okay, and I realize the text is smaller. Don't need to worry about it right now. You'll see a bigger version that's down the line. But I wanted to give you an idea of now moving forward what that new kind of interaction, what that new kind of UI, the architecture looks like. Okay, so that's how we're reimagining things with AI. The neat thing about this too is prior to the AI discussion, we couldn't do this, right? We could leverage Power Apps to house that CLETS data in DOJ. And then maybe if we were really complex, we could build something to help compare those documents. But now we don't need to. We can do this all through low-code kind of functionality. I'm going to show you exactly how I did that today. Okay. So here's my build steps, and I'm going to take you through each one of these steps today, okay? And then ultimately, at the end of it, I'm going to show you the actual resulting application that was built and how we're incorporating AI from within it. But I think it's important as part of these tech series is not only show you the end result, but also show you the steps to say, hey, how did you get there, Joe? Okay, what did you do to kind of get to that ultimate? So step one, we're going to build that Dataverse entry or entity called summary, pretty straightforward. Step two, we're going to build out a model-driven app that I'm going to call a summary triage app. Okay. And this is just if you guys are familiar, obviously, with the difference between model-driven apps and Canvas apps. There's obviously some UI differences between them. I always like to build a model-driven app just because it's data-driven, and for whatever reason, it helps me kind of work my way through the process. But then in step three, I'm going to build a Canvas app. I know Kelly, who you met earlier, is a huge fan of the Canvas app, right? He'll probably appreciate some of the things that are in here, but it's really going to be that UI that people are, the friendly, familiar UI that someone can very easily go through this step of doing this document comparison here. Step four, I'm going to build the AI prompt. Okay, I'm going to build the prompt using a model that to be able to do that comparison itself. And then step five, I'm going to bring it all together with Power Automate and put it into a flow that makes all of this work seamlessly together. Okay, so that's what I'm going to walk you guys through here today. So let's get going. So step one is building the data model in Dataverse. Now, admittedly, the data model today is very simple. It's a single table, okay? But it could obviously be a little more complex as we move forward. But I'm starting here within a solution, an AI summary solution. I like to do all my work within a solution. What I'm going to simply do is start by building a table, Okay, and this table is just going to be my placeholder for the data that we're going to capture here moving forward. Okay, it's going to include a couple of key elements you're going to see here momentarily as far as the file data points and the summary data point, but it's actually the place where all this information is going to reside. Okay, so as I come down here and I'll go ahead and save that real quickly. You'll see that it takes a few minutes. And some of these you're going to see today are recordings of things actually happen. Others are going to be live, okay? Or some of it is going to be recordings of what I've built in the past as well. But now we've got our summary table here for the column itself. And I'm going to add my first one, which is my clutch report. This is going to be the first file that I want to be able to download to use as my comparison. The second one I'm going to build is my DOJ report. So I want a second file or second column for my DOJ report. And I'm going to make that a file column as well, because this is going to be our input components to this. And my third column that I need is a summary column. This is simply going to be a multi-field text column, which is where I'm going to essentially place the output from the AI model that I'm going to run over those two documents. And you'll see there on that top, as I sort A to Z, you'll see that now I have a clutch report, a DOJ report, and a summary field. Those are going to be the three things I need. What I also like to do while I'm here building the data model here as well is I'm a big fan of building forms and views kind of in advance. So if I come into my form here for this particular entity for summary, I can come in and just create it real quick. I'm going to pull over my clutch report. I'm going to pull over my DOJ report field, and then I'm also going to pull over my summary field there as well. And we'll go ahead and extend the height on the summary a little bit just because we know it's going to have more data in it, so we can capture that. And we'll go ahead and save and publish that. And then the last thing I'm going to do while I'm here within my summary table here is also modify one of the views. Just so when I create my model-driven app, all that information is here. Again, same concept. I'll pull over my clutch report. I'll pull over my DOJ report. I'll pull over my summary field. I don't need the created on, so I'll get rid of that field and extend out the summary a little bit. And now I can hit save and publish and complete that process. Right? So now when I come back into my solution file, we're now going to see not only the table down there, but now we're also going to see, oh, there we go, right there. We're going to see the columns that are associated with all those being the clutch report, the DOJ report, and the summary, and we've already built those screens. So that's step one, okay? So we built the data model. Step two is actually building the model-driven app itself, my summary triage MDA. And you'll see the result of this at the end of today. This is by far the shortest section in here. And the greatest part about this is we do a lot of the work up front in building the data model. And so for here with the model-driven app, since it's data-driven, all we really need to do is essentially point it at what table we want to be able to leverage. Okay, this is a big differentiation between this and a Canvas app, which you're going to see the work that went into the Canvas app momentarily. But I'm just going to come into here and point it at my summary table here. Now, oftentimes, model-driven apps are used for different groups within an organization than maybe a Canvas app is. They have different needs and purposes. So oftentimes we see that as, two different apps aligned to two different groups with similar pieces of information. You can see that I created the actual view and the forms that are now self-contained within that model-driven app itself. Like I said, very quickly to point it at a table and allow it to ingest that table directly into the actual application. And now if I go back to my solution file, you're now going to see that I have now an MDA. Right? So now I've got my table summary as well as my MDA as part of that process. Easy steps up front. Okay, now we get into some of the good stuff, the fun stuff. The third step is building the Canvas app. Now, again, this is going to be the UI that we can really manipulate and make friendly for folks who are going to enter that information. I look at this as kind of the input tool for this particular process, where we're going to allow it to upload and implement or upload a few documents, and then we're going to use it to trigger off all of the flows that we're going to create here on the back end. Okay, but this is the building the Canvas app. So let's get into it. So rather than build this for you, and I'm just going to pause this for a second, rather than build this on the fly with you guys today, this whole kind of process took a little under a day to build between all the different apps and the flows and testing it out and getting it to work. And rather than do that with you, I'm simply going to show you this Canvas app and some of the things that we've done, the AI prompt and the flow we're going to look at. And I'm going to walk you through the steps that we took in order to build this thing out. Okay, so this is the resulting Canvas app. You notice that I've got, a couple of different on the left-hand side pages that I've got: a home screen, a new screen, a loading screen, an edit screen, and existing screen, right? And let's walk through each of those on the left-hand side. So my home screen is essentially my home page, right? It's kind of where I can start. And within that home screen, I've got a couple different things. I've got a heading container there at the top, so I can maintain some consistency within that container across my application. And then down on the bottom, I actually have my main container, and it has a couple of obviously sub containers under that, right? One for the analysis piece on the left-hand side, and then container 61 is that reviewing past analysis there on the right-hand side. And so each of those two sections there contain a couple of different elements. They contain some images that I've uploaded that I thought would be good. I mean, you can probably change those around. Some text boxes there to kind of indicate what these are supposed to be doing, right? And they've also include some controls in there as well. So if I look at a control on the left-hand side there, and I go ahead and drop down to my on select, you'll see that I've essentially told it to navigate to that new screen and then reset that form for anything that I've done in the past. Versus the one on the right, I click on that also, you can see it navigates me to my existing screen. So this is just simply a home page that dictates where I go as part of the step in the process. I'm now going to go into my new screen. So now this is if I click the left-hand side where I go. You'll notice the same kind of header icon at the top. I've changed the title just a little bit to kind of give people a references to where they're at, but I'm maintaining some consistency there. And then the real juice of this is that form piece underneath, right? This is where I'm going to be collecting, giving it a name and collecting the CLETS report, collecting the DOJ report to be able to do that comparison. I've also added a button down here. Now this button is going to be the trigger for kicking off this whole process, right? You'll see here at the top that I've put some logic into this button that will essentially allow me to submit this information, right? Capture the summary that I just submitted as a variable so I can use it moving forward, right? It'll navigate me to the loading screen. And you'll also notice that there's a timer set, or timer start variable in there as well. Because as part of this process, we're saving this file, but what I want this button to do is not only save the file and move me to the loading screen, but also kick off a timer we're going to see here next. This is my loading screen. So anytime we have asked something, you click a button and it starts acting, I've decided to kind of give it an intermediary screen where someone can sit and wait for this action to take place. And it consists of three really basic things: a text just indicating what it is, a simple component we've brought in with just that spinning timer that you have there as well. And then we have a hidden timer there that's sitting behind the scenes on the back end that you're going to see here. As I click on that timer piece, you'll notice I just have it hidden in the lower left-hand corner. I have it hidden because all it's really doing is it's managing a process for me. If I go up into on the left-hand side here, you can see that it's clicked to go auto start. So every time I come to this screen, that timer is going to kick off. Okay. If I go to duration on that, you'll see that the duration is 5,000 milliseconds, which is 5 seconds. So this timer is going to be a 5-second countdown, and it's going to keep going and keep going and keep going, over and over and over again, right up until the point it gets to the end and it's going to take an action. And essentially what I've asked it to do here is, hey, I want this timer to keep running. At the end of this timer, I want you to look at that summary ID that I just created and tell me if summary of documents has data in it. Because if you remember, this is going to be the output of the AI model that we have when we run the comparison. Okay. If that information has not been filled, I want you to run the timer again. In another 5 seconds, check it again. In another 5 seconds, check it again. For another 5 seconds, check it again. However, if it's been populated, then I want us to move off of it, quit the process, and move into the edit screen. So that's, just think of this as a holding page, right? That just will spin for a couple of seconds, and we're going to see this actually happen in real time up until the point where the AI model is actually able to do the processing and push that resulting output into that field. Okay. Once that happens, it then takes us to our edit screen, right? You'll see the same header there. We've changed the title again. The analysis is complete. And in addition to the name and the CLETS report and the DOJ report columns, we've now added a summary of documents section. And so that's that green section in the middle of it. That summary of documents is where that AI output is going to go. Okay? And the neat part about this too is once that output is there, this is where I can look at it and make any modifications if I would like to. Right? I can see something that, you know what, I really don't need that. I can go ahead and strip that out, or I can go ahead and just leave the overview in here. I don't need all the details. But you'll notice that I now got another button in there, which is essentially an update summary button, that when I select that, will submit that form and update that record. Okay. So that's our edit screen. And then the last process in here is the last screen that I've built is simply an existing screen. Right? The existing screen is essentially where, if you remember on our homepage on the right-hand side there, if I want to review a past analysis, I can click on that. It takes me to my existing screen. And this existing screen consists of a gallery on the left-hand side and then a form on the right-hand side. And so by selecting the gallery item on the left, I can simply look at a summary of that information on the right-hand side. So I could click through Tim or Mike or John there and see that information there on the right-hand side. And then I've also added a button here where if I need to make any changes to it down the road, I can go ahead and update that as well. Okay. So this is where it gives us really the ability to work through that process. And we'll be doing all of that within the actual Canvas app itself. So those are the two UI pieces, right? We put together a model-driven app, we put together a Canvas app themselves, but we haven't built any logic into it. Right? We haven't told it what to do. We haven't worked with an AI model yet. We haven't made it, smart, if you will. And that's what we're going to do now is we're going to make it smart. Okay. I don't know about you guys, but in my family, we use a lot of AI. My kids use AI. My wife is on ChatGPT all the time. And one of my frustrations with ChatGPT is that if I'm working on something today, and then a week from now, I have to go back and find it. On the left-hand side, you got to figure out what conversation it was part of, and you go figure out. The AI piece of that is great, but what we just built is the container that allows us to get to one of those really easily. Okay. So now let's get into building the AI prompt. This is really cool stuff because this is the smart element to this. I'm going to come back into my Power Platform here. I'm going to go to the AI Hub. And what I'm going to basically do is I'm going to build my own prompt. Okay. I'm going to give it a natural language explanation as to what I need it to accomplish. And it's going to actually put this into effect. So I'll come up here to my custom prompt. I'm going to rename it. I'm just going to call it AI summary prompt. Or no, it's not AI summary comparison. That's right. And then you'll notice as I scroll down here at the bottom, I can actually use Copilot to actually give me the instructions. So I can tell it what I need it to do. I need a model to compare documents in two Dataverse fields and hit enter. And it will actually prepare for me a potential list of instructions, which I can look at and modify or transition if I wish. Now, I've already created my instructions, so I don't need this, but I wanted to show this to you because, again, Copilot and AI is everywhere within the platform. So I'm just going to copy and paste my instructions into here. Compare and contrast information in multiple documents, highlight similarities, differences in a clean bulleted format, right? What I'm also going to do is I'm actually going to drop in a text section here just so I can put some sample data in here so I can test it and kind of see, okay, the house is blue, the car is slow versus the house is blue, the car is fast. And I can see kind of what the output is going to be, okay? You'll notice here when I hit test then on the right-hand side, you'll see kind of the response that came out from it. Here's your similarities, here's your differences, here's your overview. Okay. The other things I'll point on the left-hand side is after the overview paragraph, it says, can you provide a similar percentage of similarity between the information found in those reports? Okay. You're going to see that as part of the output as well. Is not only do I want to know, which, where do they differ and where are they the same, but I'd like to get an idea of how different they are, right? And so I can do that and summarize this. Okay. And that's creating my AI model. That was it. That's all I had to do. I'd essentially give it a defined list of instructions. And then what I'll do just from a Power Platform standpoint is I'm going to come into my solution and simply add that AI model to that solution. So I have everything tied together there in one place. Okay. The thing that I really like about the AI piece, again, this is the smart piece. Okay, this is the piece that makes this application smart. Yes, I could house that data, I could house those files within that application in the past. I could have that all as a reference, but the AI is what makes it smart and allows it to do that comparison. And then step 5, we're bringing it all together with Power Automate. So this is the last step in the process. But it is also one of the most important steps in the process. Okay? Because while we can build a container with our Power Apps, right, and we can build the AI component with the AI prompt, we need a way to tie it all together and have that process be seamless. Okay. And so this is really what I'm talking about, is bringing it all together with Power Automate. So what I've done is I've created a flow that is going to be the backbone of this particular process itself. And I'm going to show you that flow. I'm going to walk through with you step by step how I did it. So I've got this run the AI prompt flow within my solution here. Okay. So let's go ahead and open it up and take a look at what I did with it. If I go into the edit section on the upper left-hand corner, you'll see the makeup of what this app is. Okay. It's about 8, 9, 10 steps long. Yeah, about 9 steps long here. And so let's go through what I'm actually asking it to do. Okay. I want to start with my trigger. Okay. My trigger is when a new summary gets added into the database. I want this flow to actually kick off. That's my trigger. The second thing I want to do is actually get that row ID, because the subsequent steps are going to refer to that specific record being created in that summary table. Then I'm going to do 3 steps for 2 different documents. We're going to start with CLETS. Okay, start with our CLETS documents. And what I want to do is I want to download that file that I put into the Dataverse record. So you can see I'm referencing that summary and the CLETS report. Then I want to run a model over it that recognizes the text in that document, okay, and pulls out the body of that text and drop the body of that text into a variable, a string variable that I've called CLETS, which is essentially giving me the full text of that document. That's kind of step 1 in the process. Step 2 in the process is doing the exact same thing for the DOJ document. So I've gone ahead and I've referenced the same summary. I've now, instead looking at the DOJ column report, I'm recognizing the text from that and pulling the body of that out and dropping that text into a DOJ variable, a string variable that has the full text of that particular document. Same processes for 2 different documents. Okay. And then the last step in there is, now that I've got those variables, I got that information, I want to run that prompt that we just created against them. Okay, so I can select the prompt that I did, which is my AI summary comparison, which we just did. I can drop in my text input. So those are my 2 variables, my DOJ input and my CLETS input. And I can give it some additional context, compare and contrast the text from 2 different documents, highlight similarities and differences. I realize I kind of already given more detailed information when we created that AI output together. But again, this gives you the ability to have some additional context in there as well and kind of format it in a way that you would like. And then I can save it. So now what I've done essentially in this process is I've asked it to trigger when a new record gets created. I've pulled the text out of both documents and I've run that text through that model as part of that process. So at the end of the day, here's what I end up with. I end up with a solution that has my summary table that I created. It has my summary triage model-driven app that I've created that I may want to utilize within a group here. It also includes my summary document, or my document comparison canvas app, which is going to be the primary UI through which people are going to upload and submit this information. And we'll see that momentarily. We've also made it smart. This is the AI piece. We've added in an AI model that's going to do that summary comparison for us. And then ultimately, we added in a cloud flow to make it all work seamlessly together. Okay. And that's how we got to where we're at. Like I said, those things took a little under a day to all build and kind of put together. And since we don't have a day, it was kind of a fast track way to kind of show you guys what was done. But this is essentially the review of the tool set now. So what did we do? We included Dataverse to house the submitted files, right? And serve as the database for the output of the AI model. We also leveraged Power Apps to serve as that front end UI for those submitted documents and reviewing the output. Because while we want to leverage the capabilities of AI to do the smart work, we need a place for that stuff to reside. That's Power Apps. We leveraged Copilot Studio credits to actually run that AI prompt model on the back end. So when we created that prompt model, those are the Copilot Studio credits, the AI capabilities that are available from within the tool set. And then last but not least, obviously, we included Power Automate Flow as the connector of all these components, right? Giving that seamless process from the time we enter the information or enter the documents and hit go to the output. Power Automate is what kicks that whole process off there. So I want to show you what that process, what we just looked at together, looks like in real time. And so let's go ahead and take a look at the demo itself. The demo itself has two different documents. Again, the whole idea of this is that we're comparing documents. We're asking AI to intelligently look at two documents and tell me where are the similarities, where are the differences, how do I combine these two things? And so these are the two documents that I've given it. There's a sample CLETS report and a sample DOJ report or rap sheet. And while I recognize that if there's anybody in the public law or law enforcement space, it's probably not exactly what a CLETS report looks like or a rap sheet looks like necessarily. These were just generated by Copilot when I was asking for some sample data. But essentially what it is it's two different reports from Mike James. And you can see Mike James at the top of that. And they have arrest histories. They have warrant information. They've got different components that are part of those particular reports. So the idea, what I'm going to do, and you'll see me upload them here momentarily, is I want to take these two reports and get an output about Mike James in general. Okay? So let's go ahead and jump over into that here real quick. So you now should be seeing my Canvas app. And Kelly, if you weren't for any reason, just let me know. But you should be seeing my Priors Research Analysis Canvas app here. Awesome. Thank you for the thumbs up. This is the result of everything we're putting together, right? This was the thing that you saw on the Maker UI, on the UI port or the Maker portal as far as what we were creating. You'll see I have two sections. I have a new priors analysis and a review of past priors analysis. And we'll look at both of them momentarily. But what I want to do as part of this is I actually want to kick off a new review, new priors analysis. I'll go ahead and click on that. It'll take me to a screen which looks very familiar, which should look very familiar based off of step 3 in our process here, where I can input my information. Now, I'm going to use Mike James today. So let's go ahead and put Mike James. And as part of this process, there may be other fields that you need to capture that you want to collect. Maybe you want to use a case ID as a different field name. Fine to do that, no problem. For the sake of simplicity, I'm just using these 3 fields today. So I put Mike James and the case ID, or maybe it's his user ID, etc. The next thing I want to do is upload my files. So I've already saved these files, so I'm just going to go search for Mike. There is my criminal history report from Mike James. So let's go ahead. Ooh, my mouse is doing crazy things. Let's go ahead and upload that file. And then I'm also going to search here for Mike again. I know he's in here somewhere. There's my DOJ rap sheet. I can upload that document there as well. Now, I did a manual upload here. If you have a system where we can actually connect to it and bring these in automatically, we can leverage Power Automate to do that as well. But in these particular cases, oftentimes when we talk about things like DOJ or CLETS reports, we don't necessarily have the ability to access them directly, so we kind of have to download them for a variety of different regulations and reasons, but that's okay. However you want to get this data in here, ultimately, we have a couple of PDFs that we want to compare. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start the analysis. And what it's going to do is it's going to take us to that intermediary page, that loading page. This was the page where we just had the spinning wheel. It was the page where every 5 seconds this timer is going to run, and it's going to look at and see if the Power Automate flow and the AI model that we built populated the summary field within our record here. If it doesn't, it's going to run the timer again. Right? So probably this can probably take about 15 seconds to do, would be my guess. I think that's what I've been experiencing lately here. So as we wait for it, we'll be able to see. These are all the nervous points of demos where you're like, I hope it works, I hope it works, I hope it works, right? When we're talking about live demos. But I've run it a few times here, so it'll be great. Beautiful. There we go. And so now what it did is it recognized that, hey, the AI model completed, the Power Automate flow completed, and it populated into the summary of documents the comparison of the CLETS criminal history report and the DOJ rap sheet from Mike James. And it broke it down how I asked it to break it down. And I asked it to say, hey, give me similarities, right? Similarities were primarily tied to the personal information from Mike James. There's also some similarities in arrest history. They both are showing the January 15th arrest for robbery. They're both showing the June 9th arrest in Long Beach for public intoxication, right? And a couple of other ones that are on there as well. However, though, there's also differences. And now it's calling out the differences here. Hey, in the CLET system, we see Mikey, Marcus as some AKAs. We don't see any in the DOJ. In the arrest history, the arrest on November 22nd, 2017, one is showing that charges were dropped due to insufficient evidence. The other one showing that convicted for 2 years probation. So that may be something we need to look at, right? You can see other differences here as well around warrants that are included in one and not the other, including probation, parole status, even gang affiliation, right? So we're able to allow the AI model to tell us what's different and tell us what's the same. And then at the bottom of it, I've asked it to give me an overview, which is the overview, both the CLETS and the DOJ rap sheet from Mike James, providing consistent personal information and details for most of his arrest history. However, there are notable discrepancies, right? So if I don't want to go through all that information above, I've asked it to give me kind of that overview there at the bottom. And then the neatest part, I think, well, not the neatest, but one of the things I really like, and I just added this in when I was building it as part of this, is the similarity percentage. Is it's able to tell me, hey, these two things are way off, right? Or, they have 80% similarity. However, here's where the main discrepancies lie. So now it tells me where to go look if I want to see what the discrepancies are, okay? And that's the power of this, is not only do I have a place to house all this now, I actually used AI to get to this point within about 15 seconds, which is something that probably would have taken me, a significant more amount of time to be able to do. And as I said earlier, I can come in here and I can say, hey, you know what? I really don't care about all that information. Great to see, but I just want the overview and the similarity percentage. I can go ahead and delete that and then update this particular record as needed. And you'll see there at the top, I've got kind of an update going through here. And now if I come back to my home page and move over to my right to review my review past analysis, we'll now see what I have in there. Tim Smith and John Davies, who were previously in the system here, and you'll see that all of the key similarities and differences are detailed out. And then Mike James. Mike James, as we just saw a moment ago, I took out all the information, and all I have is the overview and similarity percentage in here. Okay, really, really slick way to be able to kind of take AI and embed the intelligence within the actual application here. And for those of you who are curious, say, hey, how does this look in a model-driven app? This is the model-driven app, right? This is the record that I just created for Mike James with that overview, and I can click into it and see that information in this standpoint here as well. Okay. So all that we created, essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to make this application intelligent. And while we used to only do that through kind of Power Automate, right? We can talk about intelligence and automation with Power Automate. Now the layering of these AI capabilities and these AI models exponentially increase the intelligence of these applications. So now it's the best of both worlds. It's housing all the information at the application level, right? Having access to all that information here, but also leveraging the intelligence of the UI behind the scenes. So as I move back into here, the last thing I wanted to share with you guys is I also realized that not everybody's in public safety, right? And justice and public safety. So I kind of was trying to think of other ways, use cases in government where we might be able to use something like this. And there's all sorts of ways we can use AI. By no means are they limited to document comparison or things like that. But along these lines, I started looking at and saying, hey, how else could I use this? Procurement and contract management. How do we compare vendor proposals or contact drafts? The second one was interesting, legislative and bill analysis. How do we compare bill versions, right? How do we look at one version that was created today versus one that was last week and look at commonalities and differences? Incidents reports, right? A big one, I think, would be a huge one. Human services, caseworkers' notes. How do we compare one caseworker's notes versus another? Permitting and licensing. If we get someone who's been denied a permit and they submit another license, I'd love to just be able to have AI tell me, hey, what did they add? Right? Why are they now considered accepted? Or they think they're going to, what did they do? And you can see some others on there around auditing, compliance, and education. I think the possibilities for what we want to do here with AI is, I hate using the word limitless, but there's so many things we can do by leveraging Power Apps and the other elements of the Power Platform in addition to these AI capabilities we now have. So that's it. That's what I wanted to share with you guys today. I kind of was hoping to leave some minutes at the end for about 15 minutes for questions, which looks like I went through things a little bit quickly. But I would say, Kelly, let's maybe turn it over and see if there's anything in the chat that we want to kind of answer or talk through. And I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, sounds good. Let me, I'll take over the share here where we can set up our Q&A. Let me know when you can see my screen. I'll pull it on here.
Got it.
Cool. First of all, great session. I love this demonstration. I think it's a really cool use case. I think there's a lot of different ways that it could be leveraged based on, I mean, you have a whole slide of use cases there that it could apply for, so that's great. I think we only had a few questions in the chat. There's a couple questions about cost, in terms of how it consumes credits. I don't know if you have any thoughts that you want to share on that. We shared some links, Danny and I. Excuse me. But curious if you have
Yeah.
any baseline thoughts on that or resources that you think people should leverage.
You know what I do? Because I did actually, I had the same question. I can see how many, in this scenario, how many Copilot message credits are consumed in one run. I was curious about that myself. And so I actually looked. The run between those two documents was 30 Copilot credits. And for those of you who don't have any context, it's not significant necessarily. When I'm comparing those two documents, it was running about 30 credits. When I run the test in there, if you might have seen in the lower right-hand corner, it showed 3 credits. That's just because I was running a simple test. But when I ran that comparison documents, and there's a whole math equation behind, if I'm going to run a document analysis, how many pages is it, and etc. But this particular example, I think ran 33 credits was what it was ultimately at. So again, that's probably a whole other session we can kind of talk about as far as the consumption model. And I think, Kelly, what you put in there are probably good things to kind of start with. And I mean, then the follow-up question is, does it work with large documents? Yes, I mean, more credits would be consumed, right? Based off of more pages. But yeah, absolutely. It can work with different sizes of documents there as well. Let's see here.
Yeah, well said. And Danny also put another great resource for anybody who's trying to estimate how much they're going to be using in terms of your Copilot credits. There is an estimator engine that was created by someone at Microsoft. So that's linked in the chat as well. So you can kind of put some numbers in there depending on which components you're using of the Power Platform and what types of documents you're consuming. You can get to a decent point of maybe understanding how much you might be incurring in terms of charges. Looks like there's another question. Can we create an expenditure report in Power Apps for budget tracking?
I think the short answer is yes. The longer answer is we probably want to spend some time talking about what that process looks like, what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, we have done things. I can think of a few that we have done similar along those lines. But if that's something you're interested in talking about further, I'd encourage you to reach out to whoever your Microsoft resource is. And Kelly or myself or another one of the solution engineers, I'm sure would be happy to kind of chat with you and really understand what you're trying to accomplish and some of the details. But at a high level, I don't think why that would be any problem. The the question I would kind of pose back is, once I understand the process, is how can we use AI to make the process easier? That's where I would probably go with this. So absolutely, the answer is yes, but I'd want to probably try to do it in an intelligent way if we can.
Yeah, great stuff. And in addition to what Joe mentioned about getting in touch with us, I did put some information in the chat that contains a link for a survey. If you don't mind, it's 2 or 3 questions about how today's session went. And if you have any suggestions about future topics, we always want to hear from you. But there's also 2 emails to our managers who usually facilitate any inquiries about having deeper discussions about use cases, ideas, things like that. So we'll always be able to set up some additional time with you if needed. Okay, looks like we got another one. Could this build out comparisons looking at information from websites instead of files? For example, job description slash salary from 2 different agencies' websites.
Um, Good question. I did not try that. I was focused on just the prompt model with those documents themselves. I think for something like that, might be a case of the devil's in the details a little bit. Um, and Kelly, I don't know if you have any
Yeah,
thoughts on that necessarily.
yeah, my immediate thought is if these websites are public facing, maybe this is
Yeah,
more of like an agent builder question. So if you guys are familiar with M365 Copilot and your ability to build agents, which with something called Copilot Studio Lite now, if these are 2 public facing websites, maybe you just design an agent with some specific instructions and say, here's website 1, here's website 2. Draw comparisons between these different job descriptions and salaries and things like that. That might be that would be the first place I would try it because I think that might be the most simple if you're just running comparisons like that on demand.
yeah, and you might even be able to leverage some of those agents even inside of Power Apps as well within the
Yeah.
platform itself. So, I mean, as we like to do at Microsoft, there is not always one answer to a question. 2 plus 2 is not always 4. There may be 4 different answers to it, right? It doesn't mean one's wrong. They're all one's right and one's wrong. They're just different ways to approach that topic. But yeah, Kelly, I think that would be a good option to take a look at.
Yeah, it's a good place to start. And then if you feel like you need to store
Mhm.
records or work with that data that you end up with more deeply, then you can kind of look to expanding with Power Apps and other tools for sure.
Absolutely.
Yes, Kelly, we can definitely send links to learn more about agents. Let me see if I can track a few down and I'll put them in the chat. I'm going to pause for a moment. I'm going to stop the recording. That way we can get a little bit more uh, involved with